Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the No Fucks Given podcast with me, your host, Holly Lamb. This week, I'm joined by the amazing Kate Higgins, who is a licensed clinical social worker and a coach for women in midlife. Her superpower is reconnecting women to their magic and intuition, and that's exactly why I wanted her on the podcast, because I'm all about embracing the magic and the amazingness that comes with perimenopause. So welcome, Kate. How are you doing today?
I'm great, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you. Thanks for saying yes.
Yeah.
I always like to kick off the podcast with basically what inspired you to do this work and how did you kind of get to where you are today?
Well, I've been a therapist for a long time, since 2000. That's when I graduated.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always been an artist and a creative person on top of that and separate from that. Psychiatry is very conservative, at least in the United States. It's a very conservative field. So I was a nightlife performer. I performed burlesque for a long time. And when I was getting up near 40, I started to really worry about aging and how my body was changing and shifting. And because I came of age and grew up in New York, I think a lot of people who grow up in big cities have, and I think our culture pushes us to really hang on to the concept and the identity of youth. And when I really started to feel it getting out from under me, it was terrifying because I didn't know who I was going to be if I wasn't young and creative and exciting and all the things that we associate with youth and think that belong only to young people.
Mm-hmm.
It was just so frightening for me because I didn't know who I was going to be. So
Yeah.
I started doing a multimedia project called Fearless Over 40 with another burlesque performer. And when that petered out, I had already relocated to a new city. I was trying to find my feet, find my way. And a series of unfortunate events happened kind of back to back, including a diagnosis of the beginnings of ovarian cancer and a
Wow.
hysterectomy, which put me went from being in perimenopause, which was already excruciating, to being actually fully menopausal, which was, I wasn't ready and I wasn't prepared and I didn't have that kind of support that I needed. And so I created Your Magical Midlife to assuage my own fears and also help other women who also are struggling with this big identity shift of who
Yeah.
are we? Who are we if we're not young and exciting and fun and creative and have our whole lives in front of us? Like, where are we now?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is a big change, it's a big shift. And I don't think women quite realize until they're in it what happens to you, what happens to your body. But for me, it was more like the mindset stuff, more of the mental thing. So, yeah, the symptoms crop up, they come and go with ebbs and flows, but it was more the mental side for me and dealing with like overwhelm, anxiety, because that's not something I'd ever experienced before. I'd never suffered really from any kind of, let's say, mental health issues. No one in my close friends or family had ever really suffered with that. So I wasn't really exposed to that. So for me, more than the physical, it was the mental. And then also being younger as well, there's all that other stuff to deal with. So
Or
how did you have many like mental struggles, or was it kind of like a mix of both?
Oh, yeah. No, the mental struggles were intense. I
Mm-hmm.
have dealt with depression and anxiety through my teens and my
Mm-hmm.
20s, and then I got it under control. And I was feeling pretty good for about a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out later that this actually happens when estrogen drops.
Mm-hmm.
Estrogen and progesterone actually help your mood and help regulate your mood. So when those two start to get out of balance and out of whack, a lot of women experience mood symptoms, and I certainly did. I
Yeah.
didn't realize that for me, it really started much more with anxiety, the
Yeah.
intense anxiety I was feeling that
Mm-hmm.
was just about attached to just about anything. I could attach it to anything. It didn't seem to have any rhyme or reason.
Yeah.
And now I know that that was related to my estrogen levels starting to wane. And I don't know why the doctor doesn't tell you this. They just go to the doctor and they try to put you on Prozac or Paxil or Wellbutrin or whatever. And at one point I was on 450 milligrams of Wellbutrin, which is a massive
Wow.
dose.
Mm-hmm.
And the really funny thing is that that particular medication is actually very activating. So it made my anxiety even worse. And nobody had
Wow.
any solutions for me because I was only like 38, 39, 41, somewhere in there.
Mhm.
And they were like, you're too young to be going through perimenopause. You're too young for that. It's not happening yet.
Yeah,
And
I know that.
meanwhile, and
It's
also
happening.
my period had gotten a little funky too, but
Mhm.
nobody really thought it was really out of bounds because it was like, went from being like 28 days, 25, 29 days to like 35 days, 36 days, and then back to 32 days, and then back to 28 days, and then back up to 39 days.
Yeah.
And I became like a little psychotic, like tracking it like so diligently
Yeah.
because I was
Yeah.
just so frantic. Like, this can't be happening to me. I'm only 41. I'm only 40. I'm only 42. So
Mhm.
yeah.
No, I completely agree because I mean, in the UK, the average age of menopause is 51, and you can have symptoms up to 10 years before. So, why aren't we talking about the fact that women in their early 40s and late 30s can start to experience symptoms of perimenopause? And rather than just give them antidepressants and dismiss them, which I mean, I was never offered antidepressants, but I was dismissed many times before I even got to that diagnosis of early menopause. Why don't we just do a little bit more due diligence as doctors and listen to what the woman is saying, because every woman knows their body better than a doctor knows it.
Absolutely.
So I mean, I don't know what it's like in the US, but yeah, in the UK you're often dismissed quite regularly.
Oh yeah, it's the same in the United States. It's hard to find a really competent gynecologist.
Yeah.
And it's horribly, shockingly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had doctors tell me, it was in my head. There's nothing wrong with you. Just, or on the other hand, like, well, it's inevitable. Just suck it up. There's nothing we can do for you.
Yeah.
Take a walk, drink some water, whatever. And those are helpful things. Exercise and drinking water, sure. But it's not, it's not going to carry you
Fix it.
alone.
Cheers. Thanks for that.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it is difficult. But I suppose we start to change the narrative by talking about it more, by explaining that women who are late 30s, early 40s can start to experience symptoms and shouldn't be dismissed, and then that there are treatments available that don't always necessarily rely on medication. Obviously, there's HRT, which can, I feel, be a stepping stone for some women to get to that place of a more centered place, but then the lifestyle factors are the biggest player, and that's been the biggest thing for me, changing my lifestyle. I don't know about you.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially after my surgery because um I had to be I was put on a low dose of HRT about 3 years before my surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And again, because the doctors are not forthcoming with information, they just write you a prescription and send you out. At least that's how it is
Yeah,
here. You get
same.
15 minutes with your doctor maybe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they have like 6 other people in various rooms and they're going up and down the hallway and seeing everybody kind of,
Mm-hmm.
it's weird. Um,
Mm.
she didn't really explain to me properly that these are not just, casual medications. So I was
No.
started on HRT and
Mm-hmm.
then my uterus was not shedding all, like, because progesterone makes your uterus thicker
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't shedding all of it. And she was then
Okay.
concerned that my uterus was thicker than it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And when she was doing an examination, she determined that maybe there was something that she was worried about. So we were going to do an exploratory surgery to look at my ovary, and she took me off everything. And then it was just like hot flashes and night sweats and all that stuff. And then when she did my surgery, she, you sign a consent form in the United States saying, oh, you can do this, you can do that, blah, blah, blah. And I was very adamant with her. I was like, please, minimal.
Yeah.
Minimal. And when I woke up, she's like, I'm so sorry. We had to take, we took everything, and I was like, including my cervix. And she was like, yes, unfortunately. And I was like, why? She was just like, she's like, well, you're 51 and, you don't need any of those things. You're not going to use any. I was just like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
A woman as well. A woman saying that to another woman. That's actually made me really upset.
Yeah, I was really upset.
Wow.
Yeah. And
that's insane.
I'm not really sure. I'm pretty sure I didn't need a whole radical hysterectomy, but there's nothing I can do about it now.
No.
And I do feel better now that I found a different doctor and I'm on just estrogen because apparently, but again, like you hear different things, right? You hear women who have had hysterectomy don't need progesterone, and then you hear from other people, oh, actually that's wrong. And then you hear from somebody else, also you also need testosterone. Then someone else is like, you don't need that, you need this. So it's so hard to find clear information, and that's what's so frustrating.
Yeah, because that's what my understanding is. If you've had a hysterectomy, if everything's been taken, then progesterone isn't required and just estrogen is required. But then, like you say, there's conflicting information. Then, do we really need testosterone? Is that something that's required? And that's just shocking what happened to you, because for me, I truly believe that our menstrual cycle, even if we stop cycling, is such a massive part of us, and our menstrual cycle is like our inbuilt spiritual practice.
Absolutely.
And for that to be taken when you specifically said like minimal, like some sort of conversation like should have been had before, like she took everything, that's just shocking.
And
to me,
that's why it was so upsetting. Exactly what you just said. I feel like your womb and it's your sacred chakra. It's your, it's where we all come from.
Yeah.
And to have her take everything, especially because I'm a very spiritual person. I read tarot cards. I do that professionally on the side, among my many side gigs. I've been very connected to my spirituality, my sacred femininity, and to have that taken from me I think that was the worst part of it. That was absolutely the worst part of it. Yeah. And also, just as an aside, later, like 3 months later, I went back in for a follow-up, and she did a pap smear. And I was like, why do I need a pap smear?
Why?
I was like, I don't have a cervix. You took it. Why?
Let's put me through some more stuff.
What's
Like, great.
Smear? What's to smear? And she didn't have like a reasonable explanation for it. I went to a different doctor who was like, well, you can have like, cancer in your vaginal canal. And I was like, okay, but she should have been able to articulate that, like
do a reason for it, not just like, I'm just going to do it.
Right. I feel like so many doctors are just sort of like, just be quiet, lady. I'm the doctor. You're just you're just the body. I'm the professional.
You don't know anything. But I mean, modern medicine absolutely has its place. But I think with anything to do with like menstrual cycle, menopause, unless there's some underlying condition, this can be absolutely managed through tapping into your body, practicing tapping into your menstrual cycle, making lifestyle changes, and been around women who are supportive in a like-minded community, because I feel that since I did that and brought a group of women together, the changes are just phenomenal because they're there to lift each other up and support one another. And I think that's what's missing in society at the moment.
Absolutely. I did some of this research on my own in my early 30s and then practice it going forward. But every woman should be taught fertility awareness, how to track your cervical mucus,
Yeah.
how to know when you're fertile and when you're not fertile, so that you don't have to be on hormonal birth control your whole life. You can prevent pregnancy fairly easily with
Yeah.
just putting your finger up there and seeing what's going on,
Yeah.
and I don't know why we're all so squeamish about it, or why we're
I
taught
know.
not to do that, you
No.
know?
Like it's shameful. And even periods, funnily enough, I'm part of a membership, and I did a talk around menstrual cycle and how to sync your life to your cycle and your business. Yeah, and it was all the women were like that. I didn't know this. I didn't know about the phases. I didn't know about the seasons, and how that people how about children in schools need to be taught this, and how the younger we start, this is how we then change the perception of the next generation. And it definitely starts with the more we know, we can pass that on to our children, and they can pass it on to their children. And then that's how that ripple effect happens. And that's how we create real change around menstrual health and women's health in general.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that you do that
Mhm.
work. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
and there's a few women in this group that are connected with schools and children, so hopefully be able to get into a few places to be able to do that. And this workshop I'm giving is in a youth centre, so the woman who runs it has asked about doing a menstrual cycle one to get the teenagers kind of up to speed. And I was like, that would be perfect, because again, this is where it starts, and then this is where the change happens,
Yeah. How
and we won't get to that place that we are now.
yeah. How did you get into that work?
So I recently completed a menstruality leadership program with a company called the Red School, which are based in the UK, but they do it all over the world. Their next intake starts next year, but they you can start it now. You can like intake now. And it's not just for coaches, it's for all women. Menstruality leadership program, in order for you to tap into your body and understand what is happening and use your menstrual cycle as your inbuilt spiritual practice. And since I started doing that and implementing that religiously every day, my cycle came back into a regular cycle.
Wow.
So, like you, it was all over the shop. I took HRT for a short time, and yes, that regulated it, of course, because I know it's body identical, but anyway.
Right.
But since tapping into my body and listening to what it had to say, now my cycle is between 27 and 29 days, and my moods are so much more under control because I understand the ebbs and the flows and what's happening, because I listened to me.
Yeah. That's amazing. And that's amazing
Yeah.
that you're empowering young girls to listen to their bodies. I wish
Mm.
that I had grown up in a less I grew up in a very traditional, like, Irish Catholic family where bodies
Right.
were not discussed,
No.
and it's interesting because you think of the Brits as being very modest, but it seems like there's a
Mm.
lot of change in the conversation around
Yeah.
women's bodies and women's health in Great Britain. I've been
Hmm.
listening to a lot about how, and please, if I'm completely wrong, please correct me, that there is, an interest in, like, almost like menopause leave and menstrual
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah.
That's so
They've started
cool.
talking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to bring awareness. Like one of the ladies I was talking to, like when her daughter is on her period and she feels crap, she stays off school because she needs that time to rest. So why wouldn't we implement something like that for us as well? And because there's going to be women who really do suffer for a couple of days a month, and if it's a mental health related, then you can have as much time off as you want. But if it's something where it's menstrual related, then it's not seen as serious, when actually it can be a really serious condition for some women, not just physically but
Sure.
mentally. So yeah, having that leave, I think's a brilliant idea.
Yeah. And you're when you're bleeding, you're supposed to rest.
Yes,
When you're
exactly.
ovulating, you're supposed to create, and when you're bleeding, you're
Mhm.
supposed to rest.
Absolutely.
So what
And that's where our intuition comes in as well, in the
Yeah.
bleed, which I love.
Yeah, so that was actually one of the things that I am working on and would like to work on further is how to connect to your intuition when you don't have that natural cycle anymore.
Hmm.
And that's
Yes.
part of the work that I would like to be doing. What do you think of that?
So you can cycle with the moon.
Yes.
So I learned that when I was doing this menstruality leadership program, because there's women on there postmenopause. One of the ladies who runs it is postmenopause, and obviously women that are breastfeeding aren't really cycling. So you can follow and you can still live cyclically with the moon. So you would usually bleed on a full moon, and you ovulate on the new moon.
Right.
And you just follow that cycle. And actually, that's funnily enough, that's something that I'm working on at the minute, to come up with like a monthly calendar that follows the moon, and you can kind of track what day you're on and see kind of where you are in your cycle. But yeah, delving into the moon and living cyclically is a really interesting concept. And I think that's what we used to do back in the day before other society got in the way and
Right. Before
this was forgotten about.
industrialization and artificial lighting and
Yes.
artificial food and all the things that are
Yeah.
disrupting our endocrine systems and our bodies and all those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know it's a lot worse in the US. At least over here it is more what's the word? It's not as there's more restrictions in place here. So it's a lot easier to get hold of like free range and organic and things like that. Whereas I know in the US it can be tricky.
Yeah, it's really expensive. It's really it's prohibitive to a lot of people because of the costs. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm lucky in that I live in a place with a lot of farms.
Mm.
So I can get fresh eggs where I know where they came from. I don't eat meat, but if I did
Yeah.
eat meat, I could arrange to buy, you know, a cat, like part of a cow from someone, I guess.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's good. At least you're living somewhere where you can access it a little bit easier
right.
than say someone who's living in a city, and as we know, it's just everything's just processed and
Oh, yeah.
full of seed oils and just not
Chemicals.
doing us any favors. No,
No,
it's just
no,
awful.
no.
No. But kind of getting back to the work that you do. So can you share some practical tips if women were kind of like in this like weird limbo stage and they really want to connect back to themselves, connect back to their intuition, connect back to their bodies? What would be some ways that you would recommend to do that?
I would recommend that you get really, really quiet and that you set yourself up to, if you're not a morning person, you have to set up an evening routine before you go to bed. If you are a morning person, set up a morning routine, but have something in place every day where you have intentional time to stop and reflect. I've become a morning person when my body shifted. I went from
Mm,
being like an afternoon, evening, night person to being a morning person, which is
yeah.
interesting. So now I wake up and I take a long walk in the morning. And for the first 20 minutes of that walk, I walk in silence with my headphones out and I just breathe and I listen to the birds waking up. I listen to the world waking up. I watch the sun coming up and I just tune myself into the energy of the day. Then I
Mm,
come home and I write a letter to, I say God, but I know not everyone likes that word. I write a letter just asking for help of what I need. And then I pull a tarot card and then I do some EFT tapping, which helps
mm-hmm.
ground and center me in my day. For an evening routine, you can reverse it, you know, or you can develop your own. But I really think you have to anchor. Ideally, you anchor yourself in the beginning and the end of the day
Yeah.
if you can make that time. I know at this age, you may still have small children, quite possible, you
Mm-hmm.
know, or you have teenagers or kids that haven't left your house yet if you have kids. You know, for myself, you know, I have some responsibilities for my aging parent, my one parent who's still alive, but I
Mm-hmm.
know a lot of people do more like hands-on care, but you have to carve that time out for yourself.
Yeah.
Otherwise, otherwise you're just going to be in constant adrenal fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
It's your responsibility is to yourself and to your mood first and foremost. Otherwise, you can't get anything done. So that's how I
Yeah.
connect to my intuition every day is I make sure I have an anchor in the morning, ideally in the morning and at night, but sometimes it's just the morning.
Mm. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's exactly what I do. I have a morning routine, I have an evening routine, and just that's connecting me back to me. And it's just for me. I mean, I'm lucky I've got no kids, we've got a couple of dogs.
Yeah,
So it's quite relaxed. I do have that time, but I understand women who maybe are a bit busier and don't have that time. But I always say you need to carve out
sure.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
You have
You
to.
can
And
find
if it
20
means,
minutes no matter what.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. You know?
100%.
Yeah.
Even if it's just going for a walk, like you said, just no music, no nothing, just on your own, 20 minutes. And that 20-minute walk is going to be really beneficial. It's going to boost your mental health. It's going to get your gut going. It's just lots of positives from doing that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this doesn't have to do with intuition necessarily, but your 40s are really like that last opportunity to really set yourself up, because what we're doing now is going to dictate how well and how able-bodied you're going to be at 80.
Yes.
And people don't want to really talk about that. They want to continue with
Mhm.
their eating habits or their drinking or whatever they're doing. But if you don't course correct,
Mhm.
if you don't course correct in your 40s, by the time you're really like in menopause, you're in trouble. Like
Yeah.
you really have to take care of yourself, because you have to develop a habit of taking care of yourself. I
Yeah.
see my dad. My dad's a disaster. He's
Mhm.
83, but he's much older than 83 physically. Like I live in Florida, where I see a lot of healthy people in their 80s. Florida is where a lot of
Mm.
Americans retire. So
Yeah.
I see a lot of people who are strong and healthy and walking and, like walking for exercise and taking really good care of themselves. And then I go see my dad, and my dad can barely walk,
Yeah.
and his cognition is not great. I mean, he's just a mess. And it's in a way, maybe it's not 100% up to us, but there's certainly some things you can do to work the odds in your favor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always think of it, I don't have an aesthetic goal anymore. I'm age proofing my body, so that my nan was 94 when she passed, which was still a good age, but the last like 5 years she was osteoporosis, arthritis, she was hunched over, she was in a chair, and I'm like, I don't want to ever get to that point. And I think people think it's inevitable that that's how you end up, and it's not.
It's
That's not inevitable. If you lift weights, move your body, eat nutritious food, get enough sleep, do self-care, and they're not big things. They're just little lifestyle tweaks that
right.
you need to make in order to age proof your body, so you don't end up like the person that you probably will be looking after
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And all of those things are inexpensive or free. It's
Yes.
free to walk around the block. You
Mm-hmm.
don't need to join a gym.
Nope.
You don't need to overthink it. You don't need to overthink, what am I going to wear to walk around the block? Just put on whatever. Who cares?
Yep.
Like, I think, that's interesting what you said. Like, I'm not, what did you say? I'm not conscious of my image anymore. I'm conscious of
Yeah.
yeah, like you're maintaining your body not for aesthetics. You're maintaining your
Mm-mm.
body for your wellness and your happiness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just that lens, putting on that different lens and changing the perception. And I think once you do that and then you start not to give a fuck as well, it's great.
It
It's
is great.
liberating.
It is great. Yeah, I love the title of your podcast, because it is something that comes with age, is really letting
Mm,
go of the worry of like, what does everyone think of me?
yeah.
Yeah.
You're so consumed by that, especially in your 20s,
Oh my
like, oh,
God.
you
Yeah.
say the wrong thing, wear the right thing. And now it's just like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
This is brilliant. Because I literally don't care. Like, my hair is like purple and blue, and I've got a yellow top on. I'm like, I don't care. I'm just wear all the colors.
Yeah. I love your hair. It's great.
Thank you. So I'd love to hear a success story with maybe one of your clients and how she like reconnected to her inner magic and how she changed.
I had the pleasure of co-leading a retreat about a year and a
No.
half ago, and it was for women in midlife. And love to do more retreats. It's a matter of bravery on my part too. Like, just really putting yourself out there is really scary as a business owner,
Mm-hmm.
just as an aside.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, it's probably the scariest thing I've done.
Mm-hmm.
But I had all the women, I do this thing called planner magic, and it's where you take the astrological aspects that are happening currently and you apply them to your own birth chart, and then you can pick, like, what is the best day to leave your job? What is the best day to move forward in your relationship? What is the best day to ask for a raise? What is the best day to do, this, that, and the other thing? And I got email after email after email after email after the retreat saying, oh my God, that worked. And oh my God, this
Yeah.
happened and that happened. And that really felt good.
Wow. I'd love to hear more about that. That
Yeah.
sounds amazing. Tell me more.
You can also do like specific spell work around,
Mm.
like if a full moon is hitting, say, making an exact aspect to where your natal Venus is,
Mm-hmm.
that would be a really, really good day to get married or to have a romantic date with your significant other, to make it a really
Mm.
special day. Or if, say, Mercury in the sky, where Mercury is transiting, if that is making a really close aspect to your Neptune, which is the dreamer, that would be a really good day to invest in something for yourself, a course, to explore, to invest your money and your time and your energy into something that you are having a really big dream about.
Wow. And is that something that you offer as part of like your coaching
Yes,
packages?
part of my coaching is to look at someone's astrology and to help
Nice.
them make the changes that they want to make at this phase in their life, help them move it. I use tarot, I use astrology, I use
Mm.
EFT tapping, which is energy work based on the
Mm.
Chinese meridian system. I use
Yeah.
everything I got, including my counseling degree.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing because I was chatting about this to my coach, and we feel like we have to fit into these, like, I'm a coach box. This is what I do. But actually, I do many things and I have all these different modalities that I can use in order to improve your life. And you don't always have to fit into this coach box. You can have all these different tools, and then it becomes something more just completely different, completely unique, because nobody will have all the same tools that you have and be
Right.
able to provide the service that you provide,
Right.
which is amazing. It just sounds brilliant.
Yeah. There are a lot of, I'm sure you found this as well. A lot of people who coach this age range, they're focused on, diet specifically or exercise
Mhm.
specifically.
Mhm.
And that's not as much as I do watch my diet, and I've
Mhm.
been a vegetarian for 30 years, and I exercise and all those things. It's not my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't advise somebody on lifting weights, even though we all know that's important. I would send them out to
Mhm.
somebody else if that's what they're interested in, because I can't talk to you about form or
Yeah.
proper how much you should be lifting. And if someone
Yeah.
got hurt, then I would feel I don't want to give
Of
someone
course.
bad advice. And I really
Of
wouldn't
course.
advise someone on what they should or shouldn't eat either, you know.
Yeah.
But what I can advise somebody on are the things I have studied. So
Mm. Yeah.
I try to stay within my toolbox and not just be
Mm.
a, you know, free for
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, because that's the same with me. My background is personal trainer, so I've got that as like a um, tool in my toolbox. But then for me, it's more about the mindset, tapping into your menstrual cycle.
Mm,
And the more I discover about the cycle and the power of it, how we can start to use it to kind of manifest our dream reality.
yes,
And that's something that I'm looking into more of at the minute, which I find really interesting, because I really do believe the more we tap into our bodies, the more we listen to it, this is when we can start to completely shift our perspective, which will then in turn completely change our reality.
absolutely. I'm so down with that.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
So look out for that. Stuff's coming about that
Yeah.
soon.
I love it. I love it.
Amazing. This has been so fun. Like, I think we could probably talk about this for hours. This has just been Fantastic. But I would absolutely love for people to connect with you. So please explain how people can get in contact and what kind of services you like to offer. I mean, I know we've touched on it, but
Yeah.
if you want to go into more detail.
Sure. You can follow me at Your Magical Midlife on Instagram. You can check out my website, which is www.yourmagicalmidlife.com. I have a podcast, which I hope to have you on, Holly. I would absolutely love to
Yeah.
connect with you there. I think we've had such a fun conversation. It's on Apple and Spotify and all. I have an RSS feed, so it just sends it out everywhere you can get a podcast. It's also called Your Magical Midlife. And right now, I only offer individual coaching, but I am expanding. I'm working on developing a group coaching process that I hope to launch next year early. And I would love to be offering more retreats. That's also in my big picture. So that's where I am and what I do.
Amazing. I think retreats is really big. And I think it's because women want to connect more with actual real people in real life
Oh,
now.
yeah, absolutely. I think the pandemic made us all realize
Mm,
that isolation is damaging to our psyches and our
mm,
souls, and we really want to connect face to face, heart to heart with people. We
100%.
need to be in
Completely
community.
agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much, Kate. This has been amazing. And I'll pop all the details in the show notes so people can connect with you. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me on. This has been so much fun.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. And I will see you next week.